Excellent. I'm Tina Malsom. This is Kelly Vincent. We're here with our special guest star, Richard Brooke. And I got to tell you why he means so much to me. When we first met, it was 10 years ago, just getting started in this DNA nutrigenomic field. And Richard came to do a special training with us, our team. And he put up on the screen a picture of a gold mine. And he said, "Do you know what this is?" And we, of course, said no. And he said, "This is what you guys are sitting on because you're the first to capitalize in the DNA industry." And that stuck with me. 10 years later, here I am, still with it. So you guys have to know Richard Bliss Brooke. I know you guys already know a lot about him, but he's been in this industry for 44 years, right?
Yes.
You're like, well.
You guys started when you were 5?
Yeah. Well, somebody has to be around for 44 years, so I'm the token old guy.
Well, he's the owner of Bliss Marketing, Bliss Business, and he's written books that I know you guys all have because we recommend them like crazy. The 4-Year Career, Mach 2 with Your Hair on Fire. They are 2 of the very first books I was recommended when I first started in this industry. So please help me welcome Richard. Thank you so much for jumping on with our team.
Yeah, thank you, Tina. Thank you, Kelly. It's an honor to be here. You're one of those great leaders in the industry, and I'm excited about your new company and your new team. So anything I can do to support you in creating growth, I'm all for it.
That means so much to us. So actually, just the first question we have for you is, how did you get started in this industry? Because I love your personal story.
Well, we know, but
you got to share it.
We like it when you share it.
That's funny. I was doing some kind of a generic event this morning in, I don't know where it was, somewhere in Eastern Europe, and the guy barely spoke English, and he translated every word I said into, I don't know, some language, and all they wanted to hear about was the chicken plant.
That's awesome. Well, that's what we want to hear, because you know what? When you told that story for the first time I saw it, I thought, man, if Richard can do it from a chicken plant to where he's at now, then we can do it, right?
Anybody can do it. Well, one of my greatest challenges in my career is to learn how to tell my story in 5 minutes or less, which is always difficult for me. But the short story is, I was not a good student, not because I was stupid, I just didn't like school. And so I barely got out of high school. In fact, I cheated on my last civics exam to get out of high school. So I had a 1.9 GPA. And in Central California, which is where I grew up, in the San Joaquin Valley, which is an agricultural area, your choices for employment after high school are agriculture, go back to work on the family farm, or food processing. That's pretty much all that happens in the San Joaquin Valley. So I did grow up on a ranch, but my parents had sold the ranch, and so I had to go into food processing, and I went to work for a company called Foster Farms, which is chickens. And it's still is the largest single poultry processor in the world, the one plant in Livingston, California. And Tina, I don't know if I told you this before, but I actually loved it there. It stunk to high heaven, and by the end of the day, you were just filthy with chicken guts and chicken fat and stuff all over you. But I fell in love with the place. I fell in love with the whole profession of poultry husbandry. Didn't even know there was such a thing. And I had, the point I'm making is I had the next, I'd been there 4 years. I had the next 36 years all mapped out. I knew how I was going to rank advance in the company. My vision was to run the chicken plant someday. And I was well on my way. After 4 years, I was in the 3rd management position. And, I just loved it. And so, close personal friend of mine from high school, who actually also got me the job at the chicken plant. It's great irony there. So he was working at Foster Farms, and he said, hey, you got to come and work here. You get union wages, you get benefits. And so I took him up on it. I went to work there, and then he left and went to work for a Ragu spaghetti sauce factory. But he had since got involved in a network marketing company. And so he started calling me about coming to a meeting. And he was, his name was Steve. He's passed on now. But, he's very type A, very aggressive. And he just kept calling me and say, hey, you got to come to this meeting. We're going to make a lot of money. Come to this meeting. And, the idea of going to a public meeting where I didn't know people I just hated that idea. And the whole idea about selling something and even making a lot of money did not appeal to me. I was not financially ambitious. I didn't have any material goals. I lived in a house I paid $11,000 for. I was driving a old truck, and I loved my job at the chicken plant, and I was perfectly happy. And I kept just telling him, no, 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 no. In fact, the last time I hung up on him, and then he called me back another time and hung up on me. I guess you can get away with that if you're close friends. But then something happened, and the lesson in this story is people may tell you no, and they may even mean it in the moment, which I did. And then life happens. And that's why you always want to stay in touch with people, and you always want to follow up, and you always want to keep your name and your opportunity in front of people, because things can change for them, and they can go from a no to a yes in a heartbeat. And what changed for me is Foster Farms arbitrarily, without asking me, changed their whole corporate philosophy and policy to say, you can't advance any further than I already was without a 4-year degree. And I had no college, and I was not going to go to college. And I was in denial for a few weeks, but when it finally actually sunk in that my career at the chicken plant was over, because I wasn't going to spend 36 years in the role I was in, which was a dirty role, I was lost. I don't know now, what am I going to do for a living? What am I going to do with my life? And it's not like I thought of Steve and called him, but because we were friends, I did happen to go by his house a couple weeks later, and there he was celebrating his first commission check, and his hair was cut, and he was in a 3-piece suit, and he looked totally different, and he acted totally different. And so I said, okay, show me, what is this? And, he pulled out I have one here somewhere. They seem to be mostly white today, but he pulled out, basically just a yellow pad, and he did this, U, 5, 25, 125, 625. He just did all that mess on a piece of paper, and then told me I could make $5,000 a month. And I didn't have any idea what he was talking about. The math he was showing me, which he called geometric progressions. I'd never heard of such a thing. If somebody would ask me, say, what is compounded interest? I wouldn't have any idea. So I was really ignorant about those kinds of things. And it took me about 3 weeks of going to meetings and looking at the presentation before I just sort of through osmosis got swept up in it and said, okay, I'm in. But I was one of those people that joined intellectually. I joined with my signature, but I didn't join with my whole heart, with my DNA, because I signed up. But then when it came to actually doing what you need to do to build a business, I just couldn't do it. The idea of talking to people every day and offering them a product or a financial opportunity, I went through the motions, but I was horrible at it. And, I didn't have anything to go back to. I didn't have a family, so I stuck it out. And about 2 years of struggling, which is what it took me. It took me 2 years to become a good salesperson, as they say. I sold my home, I sold my truck, I sold everything else I had. It took me 2 years to get to the bottom and wake up. And Tina, what I woke up to was the fact that the company I had joined was a very aggressive network marketing company. It was very financially motivated. It was also very product oriented. But the saving grace of the company was that the number one thing the company was committed to was personal development. So from the owner of the company on down, everybody taught, everybody talked about, all the great classical personal development books. There weren't courses back then. There weren't even audio tapes back then. But it took me 2 years of struggling, of getting beat up, of failing, of losing everything before I woke up and said, okay, maybe I should do this whole personal development thing. Because the reality was, the reason I was a horrible recruiter is I didn't feel good about myself. I did not feel confident. I did not feel valuable. I did not feel like people would listen to me. I didn't feel like I had anything to say. I didn't feel like I had a right to talk to people. I thought I was always intruding and interrupting and bothering people. And so I assertively went to work on my own personal development. I started reading and studying and listening to great audios hundreds of times. I'd listen to one audio, 30-minute audio, maybe 20 times a day. And it's not that I transformed into somebody magnificent in a few months. The only thing that happened with all that personal development, Tina, is at some point, the next time I had an opportunity to take advantage and meet somebody and show them the opportunity, I just showed up a little bit different. And I could talk about that if you want, but it's probably another 5, 6, 7 minutes about what happened on that day.
I think that's a great topic. What was the difference? How did you show up differently that changed from one, year to not to the third year when it exploded for you?
Yeah, well, I talk about it in the form of what I call green lights, yellow lights, and red lights, which is related to our belief system and our vision and our self-talk. And so what happened was I got an opportunity, and the opportunity was just a customer who called up and said, I want another bottle of product. And the bottle of product was $15. I made about $5 on a bottle of product. The customer was 3 hours away. And this is pre-everything, right? This is prehistoric. There's no UPS, there's no cell phones, there's no internet, there's no Facebook, there's not even UPS, right? You can't even ship a bottle of product in 1977. I don't know, maybe you can through the post office, but there's no Venmo, right? There's no way to get money back and forth. It was just different, right? So what I would have done months earlier with a customer who's 3 hours away who wants one bottle of product is I would have projected my negativity and my low self-esteem on the opportunity by making up, and it is totally made up. It's a fantasy. I would have made up something like, well, I'm not driving 3 hours for $5, or I'll spend that much money on gas. Or probably the most prominent thing I would have made up is I'll drive 3 hours to meet this guy and he won't show up. And I had plenty of evidence that could have happened, right? Because it happened to me before. But instead of that, here's what I made up. Those were what I talked about earlier were red and yellow light visions, which basically cause us to procrastinate or avoid. I made up a green light vision, which sounded like this. Well, if I drive 3 hours, and I was living in Iowa at the time, it was in the middle of an ice storm, so all of this was in my favor. If I drive 3 hours through an ice storm, he won't buy a bottle, he'll buy a case because he's not going to want me to do that every month, right? And so something else I made up that was a green light vision, I made up if I get there about noon, since I drove 3 hours and I got to drive home 3 hours, he'll buy me lunch. And I made up that if I get to sit with him for an hour, I'll get to show him the opportunity. And I didn't know anything about this guy. I didn't know what he did for a living. All I knew was his name, and he wanted a bottle of product. And I knew where to meet him, the Village Inn on the river, Cedar Rapids, Iowa. So I set an appointment with him, 11:45, drove 3 hours through the ice storm, got there he was in the lobby. You know, he was so appreciative. I drove through the storm. He couldn't believe it. Oh my gosh, let me buy you lunch. Ah, imagine that. So halfway through lunch, he says, is there any money in this? Now, before personal development, here's how I would have answered that question. He says there is any money in it. I would have hesitated, Tina, for a nanosecond, just a nanosecond. And in that hesitation would be embarrassment. It would have been, I don't know how to answer this. How do I try to tell the truth but impress him at the same time? If I impress him, I'm lying to him. Do I really want to lie to him, right? All that in a nanosecond. He asked me, is there any money in this? Now, keep in mind, I'm making about $300 a month in my network marketing thing. I'm driving a borrowed car. I think I even have somewhere on my desk a picture of me sitting I had a fold-up card chair, the kind you sit at a card table with, and I had a fold-up table in a studio apartment where the bed folded out of the wall, driving a borrowed car. I was at the bottom. And he said, is there any money in this? And I said, it'd blow your mind. Without hesitation. And I said it from a clean, confident place. And here's where I said it from. I didn't bring my personal experience into the answer. I brought the experience of my upline. My upline was killing it. I brought their experience. I brought the pure math. I brought this into the answer, right? It's 5 who get 5 who get 5 who get 5 who get 5. Everybody's doing $200 a month. You're making whatever, like 30 grand a month, right? I just brought math to the answer. I brought the model to the answer. I brought my upline to the answer. And I said in a clean, convicted way, it'll blow your mind. And then probably the coup de grace, but some of your people here are experienced enough to appreciate this. The coup de grace was, he said, okay, what's next? Now, this was a Thursday. There was a regional rally in Kansas City on Saturday, which is about a 5-hour drive from Cedar Rapids, Iowa, and you can't fly there in 1977. So I said, you got to come to the regional event in Kansas City on Saturday. I had enough confidence, enough personal development to tell him that's what he needed to do. 2 or 3 months before, if I'm sitting next to a prospect, he says, is there any money in this? I want to know, well, yes, there is. I don't know. Right? And if he would have said, okay, I want to do it. What do I do next? I would have said, well, you can buy the starter kit, but you don't have to, right? You can get in for free or I'd loan you the money if I had the money, right? I would have taken the weak suck approach to enrollment. But instead, I said, you got to come to the meeting on Saturday. And I followed it without hesitation, Tina, which I think made my entire career. With these words, 2 words. You got to come to the meeting on Saturday in Kansas City with people. I told him he had to come with people. If I hadn't have said with people, Tina, how would he know? If he came, he'd have probably just come alone. But he didn't come alone. He brought 2 people with him. One of them didn't get in. The other one did get in. And in the next 12 months, the guy who he brought to the meeting, which was his cousin from Lawrence, Kansas, whose name, believe it or not, was and still is Sherry Schaub.
His name?
His name is Sherry Schaub.
Wow, I feel better.
Kelly.
Between the 2 of them, they put about 10,000 people on my team in the next 3 or 4 years.
Wow. That's a great story. Thank you for sharing that one. That was well worth hearing.
I love your numbers, Richard. And if I'll say it wrong, because the one thing when I read your book, I love the numbers, and believe it or not, my team, I probably bastardized the numbers a million times, but it's all the same. It's the numbers where you say you talked to 500 people, you signed up 200, 80 did something, 40 did a lot, 21 people really went for it, and 11 people made you multi-millions. Could you actually say that the way you always say it to get the numbers right?
Let me say it this way. I have officially interviewed, like on record, they're recorded, they're published on a podcast or someplace, about 160 people that have crushed the 4-year career. And they've done it in a legacy company. Legacy companies are companies that they've been around so long that really nobody wants to join them because they're old and boring. But they're the only companies that have actually proven that, hey, we know how to do it. Everybody else promises they know how to do it, but legacy companies, they've proven it, right? So I've interviewed about 160 people that have built their empires recently, even in legacy companies, the most boring companies. And 95% of them adhere to these numbers. In a 2-year period, doesn't have to be the first 2 years because some people mess around like I did for a couple of years, but in a 2-year period, 95% of the people that I've interviewed personally enrolled 80 to 100 people in a 24-month period. And out of those 80 to 100 people, they have between 4 and 6 that built everything.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you go above that, looking for the top of the funnel, everybody has different ratios depending on how long you've been doing this, how influential you are, what a good communicator you are, the network of people. Like if you're talking to people you don't know, or you're talking to people on social media versus people that are already in your phone because you're connected to them, your ratios will be different. But my experience in ratios is that if I talk to about 5 people, somewhere between 5 and 10, I'm going to get one of them who will take a good look. And out of somewhere between 3 and 5 people who take a good look, one of them is going to get in. So if you take 100 people let's say you need to personally enroll 100 people in a 2-year period, that means you need to do about 300 presentations, maybe 400 presentations, which means you need to talk to somewhere between 2,000 and 4,000 people. And that sounds daunting, right? Sounds super daunting. I'll tell you something else that sounds daunting is walking 120 miles. What's a city that's about 120 miles from you?
We just moved here. 120 miles away would be what, Flagstaff?
Flagstaff.
Yeah.
Oh, did you just move to Arizona?
We just moved to Scottsdale.
So you're in Phoenix?
We're in central Scottsdale.
Oh, Scottsdale. Oh, awesome. Yeah. So imagine that the two of you are just going to pick up this afternoon and walk to Flagstaff. Daunting, right?
Uh-huh.
But, you probably got one of these, you've probably seen these apps. I'm only telling you this story because I'm currently doing it. But so that's how many steps I have today so far, about 45 minutes this morning. And as you can see, I totally tanked this weekend. But if you average 10,000 steps a day, which would take you about an hour and a half, you'd walk to Flagstaff in a month.
Oh.
So in the month of April and the month of May, I walked about 120 miles each month, which sounds like crazy, right? How could you ever do that? And so does it sound like sponsoring 100 people or talking to 2,000 people. It sounds overwhelming. So you actually don't want to package it that way for people. You want to package it more like, you know what, if you just talk to 2 people a day about this, just make that's your career. That's what you do for a living. Forget about everything else. Forget about the presentations, enrollments, training, follow-up. Forget about all of it. There's only one thing that we really get paid for, and that is consistently compounding, talking to people. And I use the phrase consistently compounding intentionally, kind of like this. So you probably remember in the 4-year career, there's a illustration in there about what a penny becomes if you double it every day for 30 days.
Yep.
Yeah, if you just take a penny and compound it consistently every day for 30 days, at the end of 30 days, the penny's worth $5 million. Now, I don't know if anybody in your team is a student of the 4-year career, but if they are, they'll probably be able to tell us, how much is the penny worth if you're not consistent and you double it, for example, every other day?
It doesn't go down by half. It goes down by like almost all of it, right? It's because it's the last 7 days, the last 5 days that make the most difference.
Well, it's the last 5 days only because you got all the other days in front of it.
Right.
But you're right. It's not half. It's not 2.5 million. It's $163. $163.80. So, wow, when people really understand that, what they could have the opportunity to understand is how critical it is that if you want to build a big business, I don't mean build a $500 a month income. Anybody can do that, standing on their head asleep. I mean, if you want to build a $5,000 a month income in network marketing or more, you're going to need to compound consistency for a couple of years, which sounds daunting if you look at the big numbers, but really it's about 2 people a day. And people will say, oh my gosh, I can't do that. Who would I talk to? I don't know who to talk to. I don't have time to do that. And that's all BS. And that whole story, people that tell that whole story that they can't, that they're too busy, whatever, that's fine. I get that. That's totally your decision. And you're not going to make $5,000 or $10,000 a month sporadically, whenever you feel like it, whenever it's convenient, because basically what you're going to end up with is a $163.80 business, because our business is all about compounding.
So when it comes to compounding, can I ask you a question about what you just held up? 5 that turns into, 25 that turns into 1.5. How important is speed when it comes to this?
Well, speed is important, but I believe speed is overrated by the gurus. It's important. I mean, you can't go slow. Like, for me, slow is actually more sporadic. So slow is doubling your penny every other day. Slow is talking to people every other day. Fast is talking to people every day. Reckless is talking to 30 or 40 people a day. Why is that reckless? Think about this. Well, number one, because you can't sustain it. Personally, you can't. And number two, your team can't duplicate it. So I think what we want to always be careful of, Tina, is trying to model the unicorn. So you and I know people that have sponsored 20 or 30 people in a month. That doesn't mean they're still in that company or that they're successful in network marketing, but it is possible for a unicorn to personally enroll 20 or 30 people in a month. What's a unicorn?
How do you support 20 or 30 people?
You can't. You can't support them.
Right.
What is a unicorn? A freak of nature. Somebody that just has immense influence, immense drive tons of contacts, lots of credibility. They're the kind of people that, how do you sponsor 30 people in a month? I don't know. Maybe you call 100 people and you tell them, I'm sending you the app. Give me your credit card number, and they just sign up. There are people that have that kind of influence. The problem is, in order to build this, who are the most important people in this diagram? If I can make my finger do it. They're the 625 at the fourth generation, right? They're the most, that's where you make most of your money. So these 125 people, they're not unicorns. They can't do 20 and 30 or 30 and 30. What you want is a lot of people doing a little bit each. You want people taking on a business plan that they can think about, imagine, look at their life, look at their obligations in life, their time, and say, I can do that. And so what's way more important than speed is consistency. Because if you look at compounding, nowhere in compounding is speed a factor. The only thing that's a factor in compounding is consistency. And how we grow huge teams, consistency. Now, having said that, imagine you're an airplane and you're going to take off, right? And you have a runway. So hard for me to do this on video. I guess I got to look at, right? So that's your runway. And let's say it's a commercial paved runway and it's 5,000 feet long and you're a jet. And so how does a jet take off on a 5,000 foot runway? There's only one way to do it. Put the pedal to the metal and keep it there. Critical word. Yep. Until. Now, is speed important? Yes, of course. But you know, an airplane takes off at about 100 miles an hour, which cars go 100 miles an hour. It's not speed that takes off a plane, it's lift. And the lift is the billions and trillions of air molecules under the wings that lift the plane. It's not speed, it's lift. Imagine that you put the throttle down to take off and you ran 100 yards down the runway and then something went and you went, oh, let me go over here and look at this. And you pull the throttle back and you stop and you're distracted. And then you listen to something or so your upline gets back with you. Oh yeah, let me get back on track. And you put the throttle down and you go another 200 or 300 yards and you pull it back. And then you put it down again, and you pull it back, and you put it down again, and you pull it back. What's going to happen when you get to the end of the runway? Yard sale. That's what it looks like. So consistency, put the hammer down and leave it down. And what does that actually look like? Oh my gosh, Tina, you know this. If somebody personally talked to 2 people a day about their opportunity every day for even 90 days in Euphoria, the percentage of people that have ever talked to 2 people a day for 90 days in Euphoria, that's not 1 out of 100. That's not even 1 out of 1,000. That's probably 1 out of 5,000 people. So how do you become rarefied air instantly in Euphoria? Just be consistent and do the work for 90 days. You'll blow everybody else away.
That's so
Why? Because they're starting and stopping. They're distracted. It's not convenient today. And so they're a yard sale at the end of the runway.
So just to clarify what you're saying, because I know the team, I want them to really get what you're saying here is, if you call 2 people and they don't answer, you're not done for the day. It's 2 quality conversations, right? It's 2 quality conversations is better than 30 text messages that get no response.
Yes,
right?
I call it an invite. You can call it whatever you want. Doesn't matter what you call it, but you're defining it correctly. It is a two-way conversation. I ask two people if they'll look, and two people tell me yes, no, or maybe. But it's not two messages I send to which no one responds and I'm done for the day, right? Because you could do that in 10 seconds. The effort, now you might ask, well, how many people do I need to reach out to in order to get to talk to me? I don't know. But it's the conversation that takes time. It's not the reach out. You could send an email to 1,000 people in 30 seconds, or chat or text or message or something, right? So it's the conversation. It's the will you look, and they say yes, no, or maybe. And they don't have to say yes. They just have to respond, because if you get enough people to respond, you'll get enough yeses.
So, Richard, what in you that generated the inspiration to write the 4-year career?
And what's the premise? I know some people have read it, but some haven't. So,
well, it's an old premise. So I was living in Urbandale, Iowa. It's actually before I sponsored Jerry Schaub, the guy I drove 3 hours for. And I had this desperate, wild idea that who I needed to recruit were college freshmen who were majoring in marketing. And contrary to what a lot of people do with college and network marketing, I wasn't proposing to the freshmen that they replace college with network marketing. I was proposing to them that they work with me for a few hours a week as a freshman, make a little bit extra money, work a few more hours with me as a sophomore, make even more money, work with me as a junior, more money, as a senior, more money. As the years click by, we would move up the curriculum from basic product knowledge, comp plan, how to talk to people, how to put on a presentation. And in the last couple of years, we would be talking about, dynamic public speaking and communication skills and personal development and vision work and leadership and character development. So by the time they graduated from whatever the college was in Des Moines, Iowa, which I think it was Iowa State. No, it was Drake University. It was Drake University in Des Moines. I met with 30 freshmen in the marketing department, pitched them all. None of them got in. But my idea was that they would graduate as seniors. And instead of having, this was like the epitome of my vision for them, instead of having to take the first job that came along, whatever degree they had, here's the job. And what I knew enough of about life at that time, which I didn't know much, but I knew this, that once you take your first job, you tend to be stuck. From there, you're probably going to find your spouse. You're probably going to get married. You're probably going to have kids. And we can probably find you within 50 miles, 50 years later. That's your life. And all of it because you just got out of college. You have to have a job. The first offer that comes along that's decent, you take. But what I pitch to these kids is, hey, what if you graduated and you were already making $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 a month? Now think of the choices you would have. I talked to them about traveling the world, working the Peace Corps, even going and living on their grandparents' farm, learning that life. So many options when you have financial freedom. And it's a low bar when you're just graduated college, right? You don't need to make 10, 20 grand a month. This was in 1979. I think I was talking to them about $3 grand a month. It was nothing. And yet so doable if they work with me for 4 years, right? 5th year income, $3 grand a month. That's where the whole 4-year career came from. None of them got in. And what I realized working with Jerry and working with Sherry, and I went out and found 3 more great leaders like Jerry in the next few years. What I realized was I wasn't losing people when I was going to recruit them over my products. And I sold a gasoline additive. Now, I didn't spend a lot of time in a hair salon trying to sell a gasoline additive. But if I was talking to a farmer or a trucker or, you know, a gearhead guy, some guy that had a truck or a muscle car or something, and I'm talking to him about getting better gas mileage and lower maintenance costs and better performance, better acceleration, I always had their attention, right? I didn't lose people over my product that often. And I didn't lose people over my company. Nobody looked at my company and said, oh, it's a stupid company. We didn't have websites back then, right? But, you know, that's a lousy home office. That's a bad man. Nobody said any of that kind of stuff. What were they saying no to when they told me no? The model. They were saying no to the same thing I said no to when Steve showed me this. They didn't get it. They didn't get, like, you want me to do what? What? How do I make money? How does this work? How is this legitimate? How is it this a pyramid scheme? This can't be this easy, right? So a big shift that I made 40 years ago, Tina, is I quit focusing so much on my product. I didn't leave it behind. I just didn't make it the most important thing I talked about. And I certainly didn't make my company the most important thing I talked about. When I was looking to enroll somebody in my business, the most important thing I talked to about is, let me show you about this model called network marketing, or back then it might have been called direct selling or multi-level marketing. Let me show you this. Let me show you how profound a wealth building model this is. Let me show you how you can build something once, like in 4 years on a very part-time basis. And if you build it in the right company, which I ended up not, mine went out of business. But if you build it in the right company, you get paid forever. Let me show you how to do that. So I actually became an expert at showing people the model of network marketing. And oftentimes I'd show them that first. And then they asked me, well, what company, what product? Then I'd show them my product and company. Or I'd show it all together. And for, 10 years, the 4-year career existed only on a yellow pad. And then for about 20 years, it was only a video of me doing it at an opportunity meeting in LA. And for the last 11 or 12 years, it looks like this now. I rewrote it last year. Same exact book. It's just all refreshed. About 11 years ago, I put it in book form. And the reason the book works so well is prospects and people believe that if it's in a book, it's legitimate, it's true, it's education, it's not marketing anymore, it's factual education. Even though that's not necessarily true at all, that's what people believe. So one of the greatest ways I use the 4-year career now is if I'm talking to a potential prospect, I'll ask them to look at the book. They don't have to read it. Even if they did read it, it'd only take them an hour. I ask them to look at the book, and then I show them the opportunity. And when you do that, you're talking to a totally different prospect.
Agree. I've always carried no less than 4. We can see our bookshelf. We've got a bunch.
Yep.
We always carry them because it's one of those credibility pieces that I say, you don't need to listen to me, but how about somebody who's been in the industry 40 years, right? I have my name label up at the top. I loan it to them. And then I say, if you're going to join the business, you can keep it, but then you give it to the first person you talk to.
Yep,
So
exactly.
With that being said, Lindsay did say that she was going to give everybody on this call today a discount on your book, The 4-Year Career.
Lindsay's giving a discount?
Lindsay's paying for all of them for us. So yes, so that's awesome. And yes, Julia is asking, can we buy it in bulk? You could buy more than one. So if Richard, you could give us the website where we can all purchase these.
It is, Lindsay will probably put it in the chat. It's richardbrooke.com, BROOKE.
Excellent, excellent. Because this book changed my life when I read it in my first year in this industry. And I probably read it every year since. Just the refresher of some of the language that you use. I love it.
Yep, cool. Yeah, it's made a big difference for tens of thousands of people, so that they can understand the business model and be able to talk about it with confidence and even feel good about what they're doing themselves. Because the book is really just education / credibility. It's not a sales pitch for network marketing.
Right. Right. It's just a different model than what people are used to. I actually have a question about that. I know back in the older days, I worked at the same job for years and years, and my dad worked at the same job for 40 years, and my mom did. But nowadays, these kids, these millennials, if they stick with the same job for 5 years, it's a miracle because they're constantly hopping around. How do you think this book is relevant to the younger generation that doesn't have quite the same mindset for loyalty and commitment and that we have?
Well, network marketing itself as a model is perfect for the younger generation because they don't think about a career the way the three of us might have, earlier in life, where the idea is find a good big company and stay there. The younger generation, they don't think like that at all. They think about every company as a stepping stone. And yes, they want to maximize their income, but what's more important than their income for the younger generation is freedom. They want freedom, they want flexibility, they want to be spontaneous. They don't want 2 weeks of vacation a year. That doesn't work for them.
Right.
And so we are a perfect model for them. And, in some companies and some cultures, they get a lot of traction with younger generation, and some companies and some cultures have a hard time positioning whatever they're selling for the younger generation. But I know they're open to it. I mean, it's kind of uncanny, even back in the day when a big company and a good job was the most important thing. There were so many of us that got started at the age of 20 or 21, 22 years old. And now young people are just even more open to it. The idea that find a product that you can be passionate about, that has some uniqueness, that has a story, maybe some technology behind it, and become a raving fan of that product and be an ambassador for that product, whether it's one-on-one or on social media. And then the part that you have to wrap your arms around, which is, what the book is all about, is beyond the product, where so many people leave so much money, Kelly and Tina, on the table, is they think as a network marketer, all they have to do is fall in love with the product and talk about the product. But there's another product you have to fall in love with and you have to talk about. That's the opportunity. That is a totally distinct product. And if you don't fall in love with that and you don't become competent talking about it, then what you end up doing is basically enrolling customers. And of course, the end game for all of us is customers, right? The more customers we have, the more money we make, because we don't make any money enrolling people. We make money on repeat customers. But the question is, what's the best way to get more repeat customers? Is it for me to personally get a customer? Or is it for me to recruit the two of you, show you the whole opportunity vision, which includes you being a customer, but on top of that, now you have the idea, oh my gosh, I'm going to build a global sales team. Now I've got 10, 100, 1,000 times more customers because I sold you on the income opportunity. I've leveraged my customer acquisition 10 to 100 to 1,000 fold because I also embraced selling the income opportunity. And you can't sell it if you can't explain it. Imagine I'm going to talk about Euphoria's products and I don't know anything about them, right? I don't know how they work. I don't know why they're unique. I don't know what the technology is. I'm kind of embarrassed about the products, right? How am I ever going to get anybody on these products? I'm not. Same problem with getting people to be inspired to build a team. You have to own being a network marketer. You have to be able to speak about it articulately and powerfully and with conviction. You have to be able to tell the Jerry Schaubs sitting in front of you, it'll blow your mind, which I guess you got to follow right behind that, the income disclosure statement, because that sounds a little non-compliant these days. But that's why the 4-year career is relevant, is it's the ticket for leveraging customer acquisition, not tenfold, 100 or 1,000-fold. And we only get paid on customers.
So speaking of income disclosures, I know you started in this industry 44 years ago with no desire to do this whatsoever. And now this many years later, can you even estimate? I know it's changed your life. Can you even estimate how much income you've created for your fantastic family in this industry?
I don't know if I've ever been asked that question before.
It's hard to even imagine, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm not the top earner in network marketing. I mean, that would be probably Jeff Roberti, who's made $100 million in Juice Plus. So there's lots of network marketers that have made a great deal more money than me. For me, it's more about not how much money you earn, but once you build it, how long you get paid. So I invested 8 intense years in building my fuel additive business, only to have it completely go away 2 years later. 2 years after I went and did something else, it was all gone. And so the most important thing to me is not how much money you make, but how you go about building that business and that income, the relationships that you build with people. Now, that's not going to protect the company from going out of business, but in your case, you are backed by, I don't know anybody more bulletproof than Terry. And I mean, you have deep, deep pockets and infrastructure and commitment. And so I don't know, you haven't been in business long enough to be called a legacy company yet, but Terry certainly has, and with lots of different companies. And so that's the most important thing, is build it once, get paid forever. So you want to focus on the things you can control, folks. And what you can control is the relationships that you have with your team, how you edify them, how you recognize them, how you listen to them, how you don't let your ego get in the way of relationships. Like, don't lead with your ego. Don't get your ego to wedge in between you and one of your team members. Not everybody's going to be like you. Not everybody's going to want to do the system you want to do or the strategy you want to do. Everybody's different, right? And so you want to embrace diversity, kind of a timely message right now. But you want to embrace diversity because if you guys want an exercise, play with this. 2, 4, 8, 16, 4, 16, 64, 256. So here's 2 more models of exponential growth. The top one is 2 who get 2 who get 2, right? 4 generations. Yep. The bottom one is 4 who get 4 who get 4, 4 generations. What would you rather earn on 16 people or 256 people?
256 people, of course.
Let me tell you one of the fastest ways to only earn on, well, what would be a total of about 30 people versus 340 people. Let me show you the fastest way to cut your income in that by tenfold, cut it by tenfold, or increase it by tenfold. In our profession, when you alienate people because of your political ambitions, like your political expressions, or maybe racial expressions, or whatever expressions, when you alienate people because you're not embracing diversity, you cut your income tenfold. Why? Well, because we'll just use the most classic example. Let's say I'm a conservative, and what I choose to do with my conservative beliefs is promote them all over Facebook and Instagram. You have a right to do that. I champion you doing that. If you want to do that, go right ahead and do it. As your upline or your coach, I will advise you, it's going to cost you 10 times your network marketing income. Why? Well, because you're going to only recruit conservatives.
Think like you, right?
Right?
Religion.
Now, I'm talking about somebody who's extreme, like somebody who's always out there, like being conservative. Liberals are not going to join you. Why not? Because you offend them. And so if you only recruit conservatives and you teach them that it's okay to promote their beliefs, then they're only going to recruit conservatives, and vice versa. And it's not, you don't cut your income in half, you cut it tenfold. So whether it's, political, whether it's, putting your beliefs out there, the message is, what's more important than how much money you make is build it once, get paid forever. How do you do that? You got to pick the right company, you got to pick the right product. But then the part that you can control is relationships. And that's how you honor people, how you listen to people, how you can if you're a devout conservative, how you can sit in front of a crazy liberal and listen to them and embrace them and learn from them and accept that they're different, but they are a contribution to society. If for nothing more, they give you something to rail against, right? And vice versa. Embrace everyone.
Absolutely.
You get paid forever instead of, it doesn't matter if you make $5,000 a month or 50 grand a month or 500 grand a month. The most important thing is get paid forever. Don't have to start over. You and I, we know what it's like to start over. Mm-hmm. That's,
And I know you really believe in loyalty like that too. When it comes to a company, you pick a good company. The grass is not greener. The grass is greenest where you water it. Pick a good company, stick with it. Long term, these people that every other year they're in a different company, the compounding effect never has a chance to work, right?
No, they are foolish, ignorant, and desperate.
Is that a conservative statement? I'm just.
Well, if I'm doing my job, you'll never know if I'm a flaming liberal, a whack job conservative, or right dead down the middle independent. If I'm doing my job right, you'll never know.
That is a great point.
All the liberals will think I'm liberal, and all the conservatives will think I'm conservative, and I can have my true political conversations with people who aren't in my business.
Right. That's what family's for.
Exactly.
Thanksgiving table.
Well, Richard, I know we've taken up even twice as much time as you had put out for us, but I can't thank you enough. What a great conversation this has been, and what a wealth of knowledge you are. I know the team's going to run out and get many copies of this book, and it was perfect timing. We're in a place in our business where it has been all product conversations, and the next 30 days, we're getting a new compensation plan, and the tides are completely turning, where we will be starting with the business conversation and how to create a legacy income. So this couldn't have been a better timing for our team. And
perfect. Yeah. I mean, you have great products, and you'll always have great products because you have a bedrock of product development in your ownership. And so the only question I would ask people is, hey, do you love these products yourself? And if the answer is, yeah, I love these products, then I would say, there's not anything else to do with the products. The only real requirement to make a 6 or 7 figure earner income in network marketing around the products is love the products. And now let's build a sales team, because that's how you leverage customers. And don't ever think that recruiting or focusing on the income opportunity is somehow anti-customer. Are you kidding? That's how we leverage customer acquisition. We get paid on customers. Would you rather have 10 customers that you personally gathered, or 1,000 customers where you recruited 10 people who were customers, but they recruited 10 people who were customers who recruited 10 people? That's the customer base I want. I want the exponential growth customer base.
Oh, absolutely. This has been amazing.
Yeah,
Good.
Extremely grateful that you took time out for us and our team to listen in, give us the book offer. I already know, I see on the chat that a bunch of the team, which we're happy about, because of course we want them to read your books. And we're just grateful for you and grateful for the time. And I hope that you would see it in your heart to do this again, hopefully sometime in the future for us. Because, we would love that.
Grateful.
Actually, I just put it on my website as a product. So I will do it again for you, only it'll cost you a small pittance.
Worth it. Worth every penny. We got to work consistently now for at least 30 days so we compound enough to afford you.
Yeah, well, I'm actually, for Fireside Chats, I'm cheap because I don't have to prepare.
Well, this was just wonderful. Your stories are fantastic. You make so much sense. You break it down and just make it seem so easy for everyone to just break it down into small bites, do what you need to do daily to get where you want to go. I just love every second of today. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. I appreciate you too very much. Congratulations on your success. Have a phenomenal year in 2020.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Have a great evening.
Bye.